if I may, to take you on a strange journey. It seemed a fairly ordinary night when a group of acers, odd folk who take odd pleasure in the riding of roller coasters, left America that mid-July to pay a visit to a collection of Central Europe's most popular amusement parks, as well as some of Central Europe's not so popular amusement parks, and some... Before we begin, a couple of pointers. First of all, I have to squeeze a 2-week trip into a 28-minute presentation, and so this is going to be an extremely abridged account of things. Therefore, I'm not going to be reviewing every single wild mouse that we rode on the trip, unless it stood out as being particularly unique, or talking about the numerous cities that we visited on our own time. Finally, I would like to point out that this is a subjective account of the trip. We all had different experiences, rode different rides, and chose different favorites. This presentation is based on my experience, and I don't want to hear what you think about this ride. If I don't talk about it, then it means I didn't take as much impression for it, or maybe I just didn't experience it due to financial or time constraints. So, that all being said, this is Ace Central Europe! It was 2 weeks out that we were going to remember for a very long time. Let's begin. Starting this sojourn off right, we've got Vidam Park, located in the heart of Budapest, Hungary. Filled with a collection of old-fashioned rides, some of which could stand to receive a little TLC, Vidam Park is kind of like a European Conneaut lake. Our journey began with a major success with morning ERT on Ulaanbaatar.
Ulaanbaatar! Ulaanbaatar, what did I say? Bless you.
Scenic Railway!
Yes.
This Ace Coaster Classic is an Irving Dragon Scenic Railway built in 1926 and features spring-loaded wheels which create surprisingly smooth moments of air over the ride's dips. It was also our first example of how somewhat carefree people seem to be in Europe with regards to safety, since we were constantly jumping in and out of the moving trains. Other coasters included a Mauerson spinning coaster that seriously lives up to its otherwise imaginative name, and a wacky worm in which Ken and Bill somehow managed to squash themselves into a single seat. Beyond the coasters, we also have a beautiful carousel built in 1906, which you actually have to physically pump with your legs in order to move the horses. You've got rides that everyone will enjoy, like the eerily open-air panoramic wheel, which literally takes 5 minutes to make a full rotation, and the Haunted Mansion, which features a ton of interactive gags and an excellent barrel. And then you've got rides like this. Flying Circus is, well, I'm just gonna let it speak for itself. It's the kind of ride that you only dare to get on so that you can say that you survived it. A once-for-the-credit ride, as us Acers like to call them. Also a hammer slammer with a seat attached to it. The park fell on hard times and unfortunately closed its doors on September 30th of last year. However, Ulaanbaatar, as well as the carousel and a few other rides, have been given historical status and will hopefully survive into the park's next chapter of life when it merges with the city's city park. Crossing into Vienna, Austria, Wiener Prater is essentially a permanent carnival. Each of the rides is independently owned and operated and requires individual ticket purchases in order to experience them. This led to a lot of picking and choosing among us because a ride on each of the attractions would easily rack up a few €100. Fortunately, one of them was already covered with morning ERT. Hochschiebahn is another Ace Coaster Classic side friction coaster originally built in 1904 and rebuilt in 1950, after the original model burned down during the height of World War II. It sends you in and out of a model of the Großglockner, Austria's largest mountain. Plenty of theming, but watch out for those f***ing gnomes who make it their mission to spray water in your ear as you pass by. Other coasters include a collection of smaller steel coasters, including some good ones and... what? But the highlight of the Prater comes in the form of awesome beer gardens, the Wiener Riechund, built in 1897, and the Prater Turm, a 380-foot star flyer built in 2010, which probably offers the greatest view of Vienna you'll ever find. One more point from the Prater. This is Mamba. This is me getting on Mamba. This is me getting off of Mamba. Mamba is awesome, incredible, and must come to the States now. Finally arriving in Germany, where we'll spend a good portion of the remainder of our trip, Bayern Park really comes off as very family park-ish, with its rather whimsical atmosphere and collection of smaller rides while still offering some good thrills. First off, Achterbahn. This little Zeriar Jr. might only be about 25 feet high, but still manages to pack a serious punch. Plus, is it just me, or does that worm look a little pissed about something unknown?
Something's wrong with our worm, Earl.
Fry Chutes, their new launching coaster, was unfortunately experiencing new launching coaster problems, and wasn't able to open for ERT, but they did give us free tokens for their pair of Riddlebahn Alpine slides. There's 2 of them, and trust me when I say that these things certainly left their mark on us. No, seriously. A lot of us walked away from those things with some massive contact burns on our arms from leaning out and brushing the metal chutes. Don't believe me? Just ask poor Evan Smith.
If you put it down the whole way, you'll lose control and it just tips.
In addition to a moody worm and treacherous slides, the park offered a decent collection of rides for families, in the form of a pair of self-serve butterfly coasters and a garden raft ride with a surprisingly X-rated interior. It was a trend we were going to see more of later in the trip, but I'll leave that up to your imaginations. Not a whole lot to say about Skyline Park, though it certainly offered us a challenge. We were only there for about 3 hours and had 5 coasters to ride. A challenge that proved easier said than done because an unfortunate coincidence had us arriving at the park on the same day as just about every public school outing within 100 miles, and which mostly consisted of inconsiderate children who spoke no English and took line jumping to a whole new extreme.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Combined with the low capacities of the rides and the fact that 2 of them broke down during our visit, I only scored 4 of the 5 coasters. The only one that really stands out in memory is Skyrider, a Caripro gyro flyer, and the only one of its kind in the world. Other than the coasters, the Nautic jets were the main talking point of the place. Basically, if the butterfly coasters and a log flume ever committed horrific atrocities of nature and procreated, this thing would be the product. You can see why it would never be allowed anywhere near the United States. It might be a lot of fun, but it really is a lawsuit waiting to happen. But for the Acers, it certainly managed to make a big splash. Hey, you know what's funny? Toilet. There's a big toilet fountain in the park. Trips Drill. God, did we have fun with you. Definitely one of the more lush and beautiful parks on the trip. It's the oldest operating park in Germany and started life as a still functioning vineyard and really takes advantage of that history with its theming. Museums and wine tasting are prominent in the park, as well as plenty of wine-themed attractions, including this quaint little contraption which somehow makes a really glamorous case for alcoholism.
Wine, good.
Each of the coasters were highly enjoyable, particularly their newest edition, Caracho. Many of the Acers consider it the greatest Gerstlauer Eurofighter ever due to its revolutionary lap bar restraints and its smooth as glass delivery. We barely lucked out on the ERT because it almost was cancelled due to a little bit of rain that passed through the area.
Alright, come on, get in. We'll all get on our row. Glorious feeling. Come on. I should have won too.
Gerstlauer is actually responsible for all the coasters in the park except one, and each one shines. Especially Gesenkdessau, the company's first ever coaster designed as a bobsled coaster, even though it really doesn't look anything like a bobsled. But if you're not in the mood for roller coasters, feel free to take a nice relaxing bath. Seriously, I doubt you'll ever find another flume run quite like this one, and if you get a chance, be sure to interrogate Maggie Altman about her little adventure of getting trapped in one of the tubs. Rumor has it they're already planning on making it into a movie with Meryl Streep in the lead role and directed by Michael Bay. Holiday Park. One of the most anticipated places on a tour. For those of us who have never been to the place, the impatience of having to wait to experience Expedition G-Force was pure torture, and surely the park would be just as awesome. But I was disappointed and... Hold on a second. What part of subjective accounts doesn't make sense to you, huh? Don't get me wrong, it had some good rides, including an excellent flume and a pretty decent star flyer, and also a surprisingly solid medieval-themed dark ride. The problem is that we just burned through the place in just over an hour, and a lot of us ended up just waiting around for evening ERT to begin. I mean, as far as coasters are concerned, aside from G-Force, the park only offers a standard Wild Mouse and also... hate? Fortunately, G-Force more than lived up to all its hype and quickly skyrocketed into my personal top 5 with its unique twisting first drop. G-Force is just the perfect combination of speed, curves, and airtime that any coaster enthusiast looks to for an awesome thrill. The park itself might be mediocre at best, but its star attraction is just perfect.
Perfect.
However, any mediocrity was quickly eclipsed by the final destination for week 1. Europa Park. Where do I even begin with this place? I can't talk about every memorable moment because if I did, it would take up half the presentation. It's a good thing we had 2 full days at this park because believe me, we needed it. Every single ride in this Disneyland of Europe left a positive mark on us, and each one had something special to offer. Some may have been less memorable than others. I'm looking at you, Silver Star. But each one was great. For those of you who aren't familiar with the park game plan, Europa is run and owned by the Mack Corporation, and essentially operates as their showcase. You want to see what Mack has to offer? Come to Europa. Nearly every ride in the park, with the exception of 2 coasters, is a Mack creation, and each one is highlighted to its full potential. Brand new recognition! For the sake of time limits, I'm going to narrow it down to my 2 personal best in the park. First off, Blue Fire Mega Coaster. A superb launching coaster with great elements and excellent speed. The cool thing is the heart rate monitor is mounted to the lap bars, and while it is anything but practical for an acer to actually hold on, it is pretty cool to watch your pulse shoot through the roof as the train launches. The other big talking point of the park was Wodan, which actually is one of the not Mack coasters. Wodan is GCI at its finest. It's got some great atmosphere, awesome theming, totally immersive, and the best part is once you finish walking through it, there's a roller coaster you can ride. Seriously, this queuing line is a ride practically in itself. Fortunately, the coaster doesn't disappoint. It's just awesome. We were also treated to a behind-the-scenes look at their new 2004 attraction, Arthur, but unfortunately no cameras were allowed inside, and Maggie threatened to hurt me if I violated that policy. She's kinda scary.
I know that, Mr. Man.
And the whole thing was rounded off with a free dinner at good old Food Loop. I gotta be honest with you, there's just something about having your food arrive by roller coaster that makes it taste awesome. Especially the beer. Week 1 ended on an awesome note, but unfortunately we lost half of our peeps as they decided to flake out and head home midway through the sojourn. Oh yeah, that's right. But it was their loss, and now it's time to see what they missed out on in Week 2. Week 2 began with a 2-park day, starting with Geiselwind, and not much to say in the grand scheme of things. It's certainly a charming little park. They have f***ing flamingos for crying out loud. But as far as rides go, they offer a smaller selection, with the only really memorable ones being a surprisingly solid dark ride with a funny name. Vardzahol. Really?
It's called Incontinentia. Incontinentia buttocks.
Okay, it means ride to hell in German, but for us English speakers... Well, anyways, you ride through the thing inside of a giant fencing helmet. There was also Dragondelbahn. Dragondelbahn is a Zerier spinning family coaster, but unlike most such coasters in which the cars spin regularly, this one has basically retrofitted tilt-a-whirl cars onto the thing, which results in some incredibly erratic spinning motions and a really unique and enjoyable ride. Like with Skyline Park, we only had a couple hours at Geiselwind, but unlike Skyline Park, the crowds were noticeably smaller, so we easily managed to get in all the coasters while still having a time to catch a quick ride on another pair of Nautic jets. Plan Park, as it came to be known by many of us, since none of us could really pronounce its full name, was another quaint little place with great atmosphere. While the park has different themed areas, most of it is taken up by a Wild West area, complete with a petting zoo and numerous saloons, which offer great pizza and excellent beer. It was here that we learned that a takeover of Wacky Worm might not be the best idea since our combined weight caused the chain to snap. Whoops. It also had a cute little Flitzer coaster with custom mine cars, but the shining sheriff of the place had to be El Toro, their GCI Woody. El Toro may be one of GCI's smaller designs, but it was just awesome. It was just the right combination of speed, turns, and lots of airtime, and... Okay, seriously, El Toro? Silvermine? Saloons? All it's missing is a mechanical bull and that... oh, there it is. Self-depreciating humor is funny. And in my defense, that was my first ever time on one of those things, and I lasted a good 45-50 seconds, which from what I hear is pretty good for a rookie. Moving on. Bellanta certainly has some potential to be great, but it's got a ways to go. Mainly because the park just gives off a feeling of emptiness, and I don't mean that because of the lack of crowds. The rides are all very spread out, which for a park like Efteling, which we'll get to later, works fine. But the concrete walkways and open space just came off as barren. Otherwise, it's got some unique rides, including this bad boy in which you have to adjust your wings to try and get your plane seat thingy barrel rolling. And a word of caution to anyone who might get to ride one of these things soon. I got mine spinning so fast that I actually tunnel visioned, so know your limits. This Egyptian-themed flume ride in which you pop out of a giant pyramid and then are sent swirling down a whirlpool was a major talking point among all of us, and Drachenritt was a delightfully enjoyable Gerstlauer creation, very similar to Gesenk de South from Tripsdrill, and, well, really every piece of Gerstlauer magnificence was just awesome on this trip. Every single... Okay, alright, I'll talk about it. This is Hurricane. We hate Hurricane. To those of you playing the home version, here's the deal. Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi wanted a B&M creation but couldn't afford one, so they contacted Gerstlauer to make them a ride that looked like a B&M ride. Even Gerstlauer said it wasn't a good idea, but Ferrari World said ka-ching. Fast forward X months, and Ferrari World runs out of ka-ching before the ride is finished, and Bellantis, given their success with Drachenritt, snatches the ride cheap, and the result is a half-baked pile of with less desire to ride than a Vekoma suspended looping.
That's almost as painful as listening to a Gene Simmons solo album.
Oh well. Once for the credit. Fortunately, our faith in Gerstlauer was restored when we arrived for morning ERT at Hansa Park and hopped aboard Flushbahn Norvgod. Combining a launching coaster with an indoor vertical lift, awesome turns and inversions, and a slide to exit the ride. Nice. This Eurofighter was definitely worth a couple runs. Perched on the shores of the Baltic Sea, which offered some awesome photographic opportunities, Hansa Park offered a collection of unique steel coasters, including Nessie Super Roller Coaster, an awesome Schwarzkopf looping coaster. It's a short but excellent ride with a speedometer mounted on the loop, and which also served as my well-deserved 250 credit.
Golf clap? Golf clap.
The Crazy Mind Wild Mouse was not fun. But the cool thing about this model was the mining structure attached to the coaster, that it was open to the public to scale and made an awesome vantage point of the coaster and surrounding rides. Tucked away in the back of the park was this flume ride with a very kinky drop, standing next door to a barren curve with a double helix, and also there was this giant bell. It's another ride that really speaks for itself. Hansa was an overall awesome experience, with the park staff rolling out the red carpet for us with free swag, an awesome lunch, and made truly memorable morning and afternoon destination. Leaving Hansa Park behind, we arrived in Hamburg and traveled on our own, via the subways, to the Hamburger Sommerdam. This fun fair takes anything that American fun fairs are known for and multiplies it to the 10th power. This place was huge, and overall it was just fun. First off, Holland Blitz Du Coaster. It's not so much a coaster as it is an acid trip on wheels. Almost entirely indoors except for a brief stint outside where you literally pass through a waterfall. This spinning coaster has got laser lights and flames to burn their way into our memories. The other main attraction was XXL Wild Mouse, which some of us happily christened Franken Mouse, due to the fact that it seemed to have taken a normal wild mouse and welded these drops onto it from another coaster. Unfortunately, the drops were the high point because those wild mouse turns are not meant to be traversed at those speeds. Otherwise, there was something new around every corner. Fun houses, delicious treats, Ferris wheels, bratwurst, star flyers, this thing, beer. Basically, we were all just a bunch of kids at a carnival. Don't even get me started on what the place was like once the sun set. Heidi Park unfortunately suffered from the same syndrome as Holiday Park, as just not being very memorable as a whole. Only 2 of the coasters really made any lasting impressions, or maybe I should say any positive lasting impressions. First off, Colossus. An amazing Intamin Woody with some of the greatest airtime ever and no trouble keeping our hands on the entire thing. Then there was Schweizer It's probably, in my humble opinion, the best Mack bobslide out of the 3 that I've ever ridden. Unfortunately, the other coasters were on the side of okay. They had potential, but came off as just lacking. For those of us who have ridden Griffin and or Shikra, Krake was unbearably short. After the initial drop in Immelmann, the cars literally round a corner and hit the brakes. Then there was Desert Race, and well, at least Krake could make the argument of space limitations. Desert Race has a giant field next to it that the coaster could have expanded into and just become awesome. But the ride is over in 15 seconds flat, is riddled with trim brakes, and the launch is really the only good part of the ride. Lame? However, this could be a bunch of unnecessary nitpicking based on the demographic the park may have been catering towards. Boring rides notwithstanding, Heidi Park is at least a good-looking park. The lake offers great ambiance, and the rides in general disperse very nicely to offer good atmosphere. However, if it's thrills you're looking for, well, fortunately our next destination made up for it. Phantasialand offers a kind of sophisticated atmosphere. It's the kind of place that feels very European and delivers equally elegant theming.
Upon my word, you give your opinion very decidedly for so young a person.
First off, Black Mamba. I only had to ride this thing once for it to become my favorite B&M invert. Buried inside artificial mountains, tunnels, and canyons, it's rather challenging to get a lot of footage from the midway due to it being so well concealed. The only complaint I had about that was that the immersive theming kind of restricts your view and if you're sitting anywhere else but the front seat. Otherwise, it's awesome. Following that, we headed into an indoor section of the park where we took over this bungee tree elevator thing, which offered some awesome photo ops of the Winjas. Winja's Fear and Winja's Force are a pair of what I like to call fraternal twin coasters. They're a pair of spinning coasters that are similar enough to be called a pair, but different enough to offer their very own unique ride experiences. We must have ridden these things about 20 times each. Each ride was different than the one before, and we just had a blast. We made great memories aboard the park's beautiful double-decker carousel and this awesome wave swinger with some really cool fountains that oscillate along with the movements of the swings. A surprise ERT aboard Mystery Castle was thanks to a ride operator who, while not a member of ACE, is a die-hard coaster enthusiast who heard we were coming that day and set the thing up with Ray and Kevin. Outside the rides, the theming was, as mentioned, truly something to behold, and the foliage was gorgeous. However, beauty was about to be severely outdone when we departed Germany and entered the Netherlands. Efteling was, well, it was Efteling. I can honestly say that I have never been to a park so beautiful in my life. Granted, I've never been to Tivoli Gardens, but people say this place gives even Tivoli a run for its money. The gardens, the lakes, the decorations, the theming, it all feels like something out of a magazine. The coasters are all tucked back in one corner and they each offer something different. Joris en de Draak, which is Dutch for George and the Dragon, is a GCI dueling racer which speeds through the trees, past a giant nesting dragon, and over the adjacent lake, which it shares Vigilant, we can't really pronounce it. It's an indoor water hybrid coaster with a Flying Dutchman theme. I think you can actually get wetter indoors from the ghost ship theming than you do from the actual splashdown, but whatever, it was awesome. Bob was tucked in a highly wooded area and was very difficult to get any footage of, but still offered a great ride, and, believe it or not, even Python, a Vekoma looping corkscrew, offered an enjoyable ride experience with Vekoma's newer train designs. The landscaping, the fountains, the authentic miniature steam train, which offers a great mode of transportation from the back of the park to the front. I feel like this segment needs something. But what? What could it be? A montage!
Catching my breath, letting it go, turning my cheek for the sake of the show.
Okay, maybe not. As European temperatures reached record highs, we arrived at Toverland. It's a half indoors, half outdoors park with a surprisingly solid layout which took awesome advantage of its expansion capabilities with its awesome rides. Troy is another GCI masterpiece, and I'm starting to see a trend here with the highly banked curves, station fly-throughs, and the never-quitting speed. Booster bikes are a lot better than I think anybody thought they would be. I think Vekoma's take on these motorcycle coasters are actually better than Zamperla's. As mentioned, temperatures reached record highs and forced us indoors for most of the remainder of the time. Fortunately, there was plenty to do. A few of the rides that even stretched from the indoors to the outdoors included the log flume, and this cool little powered alpine slide, which could have gone faster, but it was still fun. The indoor section also featured several massive jungle gyms, which we quickly commandeered in some awesome acrobatics and some, well, indoor water slides, an excellent max spinning coaster, a fun house that just made you want to sing. I know that I already made a Grease reference. What are you gonna do about it? Also, who could forget those fountains shooting over the walkways? Just, yeah. So our next destination as we arrived back in Germany was Krager Crimes, and it was, well, I honestly have no idea how it was, because Ken and I actually ditched the tour for that part of the day due to, well... Priorities! If you would like to see what the fair was all about, I highly recommend Thrillography, a photo blog run by our favorite Southern Flaming Acer Alex Dickey. If you haven't seen his blog, check it out. He's got some great photos and some awesomely hilarious commentary. And so the day came, the final destination in our sojourn, Movie Park, Germany, and boy was it was okay. Movie Park comes off as kind of a mini Universal Studios, the way it themes everything around films and television. Or almost everything. Van Helsing's Factory, our third Gerstlauer bobsled coaster, offered an awesome morning ERT, complete with a special run-through with the lights on, and seriously, some of these decorations would never be allowed in a park like Cedar Point. Right next door, we went to lunch at Van Helsing's Club, where the atmosphere is gloomy, the beer tastes like hell, and the diners are treated to classic reruns of The Addams Family. It also offered the only other Intamin floorless roto drop, the other being Six Flags Acrophobia, in the world. The problem is that this park's coasters seem to be outshone by the other rides in the park. Aside from Van Helsing's Factory, the coaster just kinda came off as dull. Not to mention painful. I guess we gotta end the tour on a low note. Or not! None of us saw this one coming at all. Our 2 weeks through Central Europe ultimately brought us to Duisburg, Germany, and a surprise visit to the world-famous Tiger and Turtle roller coaster sculpture. I don't care what anyone says, we're totally counting this one as a credit. We climbed, we scaled, and we felt that thing swaying as the wind hit the structure, and just took an awesome time on this thing. And for those of you wondering, no, you cannot scale the loop. It's gated off. Following our little climbing adventure, we ended the trip on a big, awesome note, with a big thank you tribute to our awesome trip coordinators who, trust me, thoroughly earned it. So, that's pretty much it. Ace Central Europe was a hit for everyone. If you want to see more, feel free to buy my DVD. I'd like to take the time now to thank Ray Topsher, Kevin Schreiner for being the awesome trip coordinators. Thank you to our drivers, Aaron, Manfred, and Wolfie. Thank you to our coach captains, Dave. Dave was a coach captain, but Mackie usurped the position midway through, and hey, was Bill a coach captain? I'm not sure. He was? Really? Are you sure? I don't know. I find it hard to take anyone seriously as a captain who woke up every morning and spent half the bus ride looking like this. And now that I seem to have exhausted the entire world's quota of reference jokes, maybe we won't make any more for a little while.
Say what?
That's a lot of fish.
What? It's my video.